Just want to make sure the right thing. Okay. I think last time like I said, on the Buddhism, the subject is quite huge. And last time we did cover a lot of it. And here I would be covering some more part on the Buddhism part, basically, how it spread, how it was destroyed, where all it went, and all that. And before that, I just want to one second. I just want to just put this disclaimer because I would be putting this on the YouTube later on. So this is just a disclaimer for the YouTube. Today I will be just covering some of the Buddhist, basically the divisions in Buddhism. Basically, after Buddha was born and died, it was around 500 BC, and he died around 400 some years. So that was in BC. But the religion did not really pick up till it came to about 300 BC. At that close to 300 BC, the Alexander invades India, and you have the Greek Indo-Greek kings ruling at that time. And the Greeks did not have a religion by that time. Jesus also has not come by that time. It's BC, before Christ. So they were all pagans. They had different pagan gods. Like I said, most of their gods were the what you call the Titans, like Zeus and other gods. They were the sons of Noah. They were Jupiter and all that. They were the gods which Greeks followed. When they invaded India, they got a liking towards the teachings of Buddha, and the Greeks basically took over the Buddhist religion. And basically, the Mahayana sect started during the Buddhism time. That was the first sect which actually started. And basically, after Mahayana, then you have the Theravada, or called the Hingyana, and then you have the Vajrayana. These are the three major sects in Buddhism. Most of the what do you call in Hinduism, you have the mantras and tantric come from Vajrayana. From Vajrayana, you have the Tantrayana, what do you call the tantric religions. Basically, the Mahayana spread towards China and some in India and to the West Asian side. Theravada went towards the Sri Lankan side, and the Vajrayana went towards the north, the Tibetan and the northern India side, basically. And that's what I cover on the division of Buddhism. And the other topic I would cover is the inspirations, the copies of religion, of how Buddhism basically inspired many other religions and how the copies were done. I also talk about the Nalanda and the Takshila University. Takshila is supposed to be the world's oldest university. It was started by the Buddhists. They were one of the few who started giving education, basically, and how Buddhism was wiped out from India. And lastly, I go into the remains of Buddha, and here Buddha was called as Shakyamuni, like I said before. This is my slides first presentation. Here I just give, I make it very clear the author does not advocate that Shem was in person, the founder of this religion, but the inspiration to the memory of Shem. That means, and if you look in the book of Jubilees, you know that Shem's grandsons, who were Joktan and Ophir, and Ophir is mentioned in the Bible as the land from where Solomon's gold comes in. Ophir was somewhere near on the west coast of India, probably on the from Maharashtra to Kerala. That part was somewhere there was Ophir, and that was a port which was known to Solomon. It could also be the Indus Valley civilization on the port of near Karachi. That could also be Ophir. We don't know the exact location of Ophir, but Ophir is the Indian continent, basically. And here I just give a brief of how they have two divisions between Buddhism. One is called the Shamans and one is called the Brahmans. Now, don't confuse that Brahman for Brahmins. They were a separate sect at that time. Brahmins did not, and I will cover that in my Hindu Vedic religion as to who are the Brahmins. But this was in Buddhism. They were called the Shamans and the Brahmans. And the shamans basically were probably the memory of Shem. But Shem might have not visited India, but of course his grandsons might have come over this side. But on the left side, what I write is the book of Jubilees does mention all this, the Greek mythologies. The Hercules known in India with different gods, and I'll cover that who was Zeus and Apollo in India. They were all the sons of the Titans in the Greek gods, and Mizraim was the son of Cush, who founded Egypt. That's why Egypt was known as Misr, the father of the Greek gods. Here I just give a small write-up about Ophir and Joktan. Basically, that Ophir was a great-grandson of Shem, settled in India, making his descendants the founder of the Indus Valley civilizations. And in Indian history, he is known as Sharma or Sam. In certain Indian accounts of the flood, the three sons of the heroes are mentioned as Yepati, Sharma, and Harma. This is there in the Hindu literature. And you, like I said in my previous, when I covered Zoroastrians, there also the sons of Rishabhadeva was known as Shama and Hama. Shem is associated with the Hebrew word Hashem, meaning the name. And you might have heard this name Hashem in a lot of Muslims. Islam does take that name. And you might have heard the Hashim. Basically, it's the same thing. It's Hashem in Hebrew means the name. And here you see how the lots was allocated, and Shem gets the whole area of Arabia and Asia. Ham was given Africa, and Japheth was given Europe. And in this chart, you have his sons also, basically his sons and his grandsons. And there on the right side of Arabia, can you see my mouse moving? I always wanted to ask this. Can you see my mouse moving?
No.
No? Oh, I don't know why. I thought this mouse movement was shown. Okay, on the right side, on the Arabia side, you can see Rama. Rama was a grandson of.
Yeah, I can see. Yeah, slide. Yes. Yeah.
So that is Rama, and many of you will later on, when I get into the subject of Vedic history, you'll come to know where these names come from. Rama, Shiva, Shiva. You see here, Septon. These are all names of the grandsons of Noah, basically of Shem. So now we know that there was a Rama in the sons of Noah too. So this is just a map of all where his sons have gone. Lud and Put. You see the Rajputs you get in Rajasthan, and you see his grandson Put was in Libya. So there is a connection of a lot of things in ancient history with the sons of Noah. Coming back to Buddhism, this is a chart of how Buddhism spread during the time of Ashoka. This is around 300 BC. Buddhism did spread all over India, to the southern India, the northern India, and all the way from Syria to Egypt to Greece. And on the left side, you see there Alexandria. So Buddhism did spread to quite a lot of place during the time of Ashoka. Here I'll make a chart and I'll run through this chart pretty fast so that you get a timeline as to what happened when. During the 5th century BC, we have the birth of Buddha called Shakyamuni in northern India, in Lumbini. Basically, it's today in Nepal, but Buddha was born at that time. In the 4th century, Alexander conquers India. He comes to the western part of India. He doesn't enter India, but near I think it's the Hadapis River near northern Punjab. He comes in 330 BC. And just note that till after Buddha's death, Buddhism doesn't take a huge hold till quite some time. After that, you have the Seleucid Empire. When Alexander dies, his generals, he leaves his generals in India, in Persia, in Egypt, so that the conquered land can be handled by them. They are called the Seleucid Empire. They ruled between 300 to 250 BC, and there have put their coins there. And then you have the Mauryan Empire. The Mauryan Empire basically was ruling, which is not today really India. They were ruling across the northern part of Afghanistan and Bactria. Bactria today is Uzbekistan and all that. That area was called Bactria. So the Mauryan Empire started there basically, and these were their coins. You had the Magad symbol and all that, Magadha symbol there. Then in the second century BCE, you have the Han Dynasty. The first mention of Buddhist statues brought from Central Asia into China was in 120 BC. By this time, the Mahayana, I told you that Mahayana started during the Mauryan Empire and within 300 BC. So the Mahayana sect of the Buddhism started by this time, basically. And then you have the Greco-Bactrian kings, the what we call the Hellenistic period. This is between this second and the first century, and I have put some Greco-Bactrian kingdom coins here. The Indo-Greek kingdoms between 180 to 10 CE, there's a common era, there's AD. You have, we don't have to go through all the kings. Some of the kings were Menander and a lot of other names were there. The Buddhist kingdoms during those Greco-Indian period. Then you have the Shunga Empire, that was between 185 to 73 BCE. This is all just before Christ. Then you have the first century. You have the nomadic invaders who became the Hellenic and propagated Buddhism. Basically, the nomadic invaders invaded India like the Huns and all that. They come in the first century. But they also were very influenced by Buddhism at that time. Like I told in my previous presentation, how Alexander was very impressed with the naked monks. They were probably not Buddhists, but they were Jains. Then you have the Indo-Scythian kings. Now, this plays a little importance for us, the Indo-Scythians and the Indo-Parthians, basically. In the first century, the Indo-Scythian kings and the Indo-Parthian kings were ruling the north side of India. And this is where probably St. Thomas, in the Acts of the Apostles, St. Thomas visits a king called Gondophares. At that time, when the Christians in southern India were claiming that St. Thomas came by the route of northern Pakistan, which is called Sindh today, the Indian historians said that this is all fake, it's a fake story. But during the British time, they found these coins. If you see my mouse moving here, these are the coins of the king Gondophares. And Gondophares is mentioned in the Acts of the Apostles, where St. Thomas meets Gondophares, and there is a different story. I'm not going into that of where St. Thomas basically brings back the dead king after he dies, and basically that's a long story. But that's a story of St. Thomas, and from there St. Thomas is brought down to Calicut by a merchant, Jewish merchant called Rabban. Rabban then brings him down the coast to the coast of Calicut, and that's how he comes to India, St. Thomas. On the first and the second century, third century, we have the first known Buddha statues. This is the first time statues are made in India. Statues were never made in India, nor if anyone tells you that they had a Hindu statue, this statue, they don't know what's happening. Statues were never made in India. The first time the statues were made were the Gandhara arts. These were the statues made by the Greeks, basically. They were not made by Indians, but they were called the Gandhara arts. So they started making statues of Buddha in the Greek style, basically. This is the first known Buddha statues, and I'll show you some of them, basically. Then you have the Kushan Empire, and Kushan Empire also followed Buddhism, but they had different gods too. They were very pagan. They had a different god. I put the coins here. They had a god called Osho. Osho and Omo. Omo was his wife. This was basically the inspiration for the later, what do you call the Hindu gods, who they call as Shiva. Basically, Osho was the gods on their coin. Then you have between the 4th and the 6th century, the start of Buddhism in Japan, China, Bactria, and in the basin, Tarim basins. Then you have the Gupta Empire between 320 and 550 BD, Chandragupta Maurya. Basically, Chandragupta Maurya was here, but you have the Gupta Empire continuing here. When you say Chandragupta and Ashoka and all that, they come here in the Mauryan Empire in 320 BC. But this is the continuation of the Gupta Empire. Mahayana Buddhism. And then in the 7th century, after 750, you have the invasion of Sindh by Muhammad bin Qasim. And Islam invasion starts in the 7th to the 8th century. In the 11th century, you have the Pala Empire. And then you have the Theravada, the second sect of Buddhism starting in the Theravada section in Sri Lanka in the 11th century, basically. Buddha's son, after his death, takes his relics, basically, and travels down to Sri Lanka, and that's how Buddhism spread in Sri Lanka. This is the Ashoka edicts we have. Now, let me give you some a very interesting thing about these Ashoka edicts. They were discovered during 1880 or 1890 by the British. Till that time, Indians never knew the history of Ashoka. They never knew there existed a king called Ashoka. It was written in 3 languages, in Pali, in Brahmi script, and Sanskrit. And none of the Indian scholars at that time could basically read these scripts. So the British had to send it to professors in England, Karl Marx, who basically was a scholar in Sanskrit at that time. And Karl Marx did most of the translation of this. And here, one of the Ashoka edicts, it's called the Edict 13, which is in here is written. Here, the king's domain mentioned about the Yavanas. The Yavanas were known as Greeks. Different today, we say the Greeks, the Russians, but in those days, they were known by different names. The Greeks were known as Yavanas. The Bojas, the Pitinkas, the Andas, the Palidas, these are all basically people from outside. And this is what the translation is what on written on this. This is Atta Vasa Bisita, that means 8 years of anointing, referring to the Kalinga War. Devasam Piyasa Piyadasini, that means of the king Devasa Piyadasini, Kalinga was conquered. Basically, what is written here is Ashoka is declaring that he conquered Kalinga in the war of Kalinga. Below that, I show the pillar of Ashoka. This is there in Odisha, and this basically has the scripts mostly of. And Ashoka was the king who basically helped Buddhism come to its peak. And on the right side, I think you might have seen the statues. These are Gandhara arts. These are statues created for Buddha, but they have Greek gods. You see in the middle, that is Buddha. His face is being destroyed. And I'll come to that later on as to how and why they were destroyed. You see at the right, that is a female follower, Bodhisattva. And you have the Greek gods, the naked man at the right is probably Hercules. And you have the Zeus god and Apollo. And these are all Greek gods standing with Buddha. Basically, the Greeks merged their gods with the Buddhist gods. Now, here also you can see, you see Buddha sitting on the top, and you see his clothing on the top, and you see the Buddha's clothing on the bottom one here, where Zeus is standing with Vajra. He's called Vajrapani, but he's actually Zeus. Zeus, the god of the wind. And you can see the robe which he is wearing here. It's got a very Greek, how the Greeks used to wear the gowns. They have got a Greek influence. Even his hairstyle is very Greekish. Greeks had very curly hairs, and that is always shown in their statues, basically. The Indo-Greek descendants of the armies of Alexander from Gandhara, who first represented the Buddha in human form in stone and metal, in relief and in round and in coins, in the first century BCE, before the Common Era. Here, Buddha is emphasized as Sannata. You might have heard the Hindi word "kitna sannata hai idhar." That means silence, emptiness. That word Sannata basically is not a Hindi word. It comes from Buddha, because Buddha emphasized on Sannata, the emptiness of the mind. The concept of Buddhism is very different. You empty your mind and then you meditate. But in Christianity, we have got a different philosophy. You don't empty your mind, because your empty mind attracts the devil. That's why you say an empty mind is a devil's workshop. So our concept in philosophy is very different, but in Buddhism, the concept was very different. Buddha believed in the Sannata, the emptiness, and the non-self. So for some people, this will be confusing, but it was a different approach towards religion. Here I show some of the Buddhist stumps. Here I want you to understand what is a stump. The stump basically is a pillar sort of thing where Buddha was always shown on it. And you can see below in the Mathura arts, like I said, there is Gandhara arts and Mathura arts. The Mathura arts were statues and arts done in India, and the Gandhara arts were done in basically by the Greco-Indians. Here you see, this is a stump basically. These are in Nepal today. If you visit Nepal, you will see them. And you see the Buddha sitting, and here below you see I think that's a Hindu priest, but he's sitting with a stump. But the Hindus converted the stump into Shiva Lingam, the lingam for the Shivas. You see on the right side, you see the stump with where the water basically drains and it goes. But this was later on taken over, converted into lingams by the Hindus, basically. And you can see the proof here, everything. And Buddha had a very famous saying that, the three things cannot be long hidden: the sun, the moon, and the truth. These are the symbols of Buddhism. And I want to show you something also here, which is quite interesting. This is on the left side is the Vajra, the weapon of Zeus. And this is always held by Vajrapani. Vajrapani is known as the Bodhisattva, and I'll show you shortly as to what is a Bodhisattva. On the top is the chakra. We have this on our Indian flag. The chakra on the flag is basically nothing but Buddha's chakra. There is meaning for the 8 wheels on it. There are 8 wheels. Every wheel has a meaning. The right speech, the right action, the right language. Basically, Buddha was preaching very similar to what Jesus Christ also preached: love, equality, be kind to people. His teachings were very good, but his philosophy was, according to us Christians, I think, me being a Christian, I think the philosophy was very wrong. But at that time, even Jesus was not there when he was in 500 BC. And I don't think the Old Testament and all those days, there was no printing and all that. Every religion hid their stories. They never allowed anyone to read things. So the religion was a very thing in a vacuum. So most probably, and even if some people got the hint of any religion, it was all in broken. And that you will realize when I come to the Vedic religion, as to how the misinterpretation of every religion got transferred into different countries and people interpreted it in a different way. On the right side, you see this is in the stupa in Orissa, what do you call the Ashoka pillars. And you see at the top, that's an inverted U, because in Buddhism, they don't have Om, they have Am. Am is the word for them, for the sacred word. This was later taken over by the Vedic people and they made it Om. This sign on the top was inverted and it becomes the lower sign, Om. You see the resemblance here? This was, it's the sound was very specific, and there is a lot of history to this word It was also used in the Sumerian languages, and interestingly, the word Amen, which we Catholics use, is not a Christian word. And I don't want to go deep into it today, but it comes from a long time pagan usage of it. Even during the Egyptian period, Amen was used. It was used in the Sumerian time. So at that time they had a word for the Almighty. And in Buddhism, the sacred word was Om, which they say in Hinduism, basically. It is primarily used to symbolize the body, speech, and mind of the Buddha, often chanted at the start of the mantra. This is a Buddhist mantra, Om Mani Padme Hum. This is not a Hindu mantra, it's a Buddhist mantra, where they use the word Om Mani Padme Hum. The Greek gods in Buddhism, but now in Greeks, they use the word Bodo. So if you ever read something which was in Greek, and they use the word Bodo, Buddha was also known as Bodo in Greek. Some of the Greek gods which were taken into Indian mythology were Heracles. Heracles was Vajrapani, but Heracles was in Greek was also known as Apollo. In English, we know him as Hercules, the one we had the Hercules tires, the man's catching the tires. If you remember in olden times in India, people at our age knew Hercules tires. I don't know if they're still there. Then he had another Greek god called Tyche and Hariti. This was also brought into the Indian as a mother goddess. Zeus and the Dharma wheel. The wheel basically comes from Zeus. Zeus used to catch a wheel, and that Dharma Chakra, what you say. And the Indra god, basically Indara, I told in my last presentation, who is Indara. Basically, it's a Mithani god. Later on, it became a Greek god, and then it becomes an Indian god, basically Indara. Gaia is also a Greek god. And if anyone remembers when I did the presentation on Noah, I said that Noah's wife was also known as Gaia. Gaia was Mother Earth. Noah's wife was always known as Mother Earth. She was known as Diana in Greek. And in India, she becomes Gayatri. Gayatri is Mother Earth in India, basically. You have the other god called Marisi. This was an Iranian god. In Buddhism, the Iranian god Marisi becomes Tara Devi. Tara Devi later on becomes Durga and Kali in India. And I'll show you that later on how the changes take place. Megasthenes is the writer I told in my last this. Megasthenes was ambassador to the court of Chandragupta Maurya, and he wrote the book Indica. Basically, that's the first book anyone has written about India. If you want to know about India, the only book is Indica. Of course, there are other Greek writers who wrote before Megasthenes, like Critias and Berosus and all, but we have lost all their information today. We don't have the writings of Critias and Berosus. But Megasthenes makes a difference division. He writes about India when he visits it. He says that there's a division among the philosophers. He doesn't call them Buddhists. He called them philosophers. Even Alexander called them as philosophers, because they were always preaching about principles of life and all that. The division of philosophers saying that there are two kinds, one of which he called the Brahmachins and the others are the Sarmans, what he called Shamans and the Brahmans. He called them Brahmans because he had a Greek accent. We don't know which one was it, but in India we call them as Brahmans and Shamans. So the words Sharmans come and Brahmans. So basically, the Sharmans were the learned ones, and the less learned ones were the Brahmans. That's why they call Shem as the most learned. He had the most knowledge among the Noah's son. He was the closest to God. God blesses Shem too. So he was a philosopher. So basically, I'm not saying with guarantee that this is Shem, but in the memory of Shem, the shaman tribe may have been formed. And this comes from the book of Strabo. Strabo was a Greek writer, and this is the reference to his book in book 15, chapter 158 to 60. If anyone wants to make this is what Megasthenes mentions it. Here I'm giving you a chart of how the different layers in Buddhism takes place. You start as a samanera, that is means a trainee who takes initial respect person, but is not yet fully ordained. Like a priest, you start as a saman. They call it samanera. At the bottom, I've made a triangle, samanera. Then you go up one level high as a bhikshu. You might have heard the word bhikshu, a beggar with a bowl, with the orange dress. Basically, they were called bhikshu. A woman was called bhikshuni, and they were called monks. That's the level you had after you becoming a saman. Then after some years, when you progress, you become a thera, a elder. That's called the Theravada sect. Within Mahayana, you have the Theravada. That means the group of elders. Mahathera means the great elder. And above that, you have the Bodhisattva. And this you need to understand what is a Bodhisattva, because there are many gods today which were converted into the Hindu gods, are basically Bodhisattvas. Above Bodhisattva, you get the Bodh. Bodh means Buddha. You have attained Nirvana at that time. That is the cycle of how you become from a common man to a Bodh, to a Buddha. So there were about 24 Buddhas. Gautam Buddha or Shakyamuni is the last Buddha, 24th. They say they may come another Buddha in future, the 25th Buddha. Like how we say Jesus will come on the day of resurrection. The Buddhists believe that on the final days, the last Buddha will come too. So every religion has something that someone last will come. This is a timeline I've set here, the development and propagation of Buddhist traditions. Here, I'm not going through everything, but the early Sangha in India, the early Buddhist schools between 250 and 100 Common Era. The Mahayana was fully formed by 5th century AD. Then you have the Vajrayana between the 7th and the 8th century. In Sri Lanka, the Theravada Buddhism had started between 250 BCE. Like I said, Buddha's son, Rahul is Buddha's son. He takes his ashes and his teeth and all that, and he goes to Sri Lanka, and that's how he spreads Theravada Buddhism there. The Central Asia, you have the Greco-Buddhism, which started between 250 BC and ended between 5th century AD. Because Buddhism ends in Greek. Because by that time, Christianity takes over. You had Jesus's apostles and all going there, and most of the Greeks were converted to Christianity. So basically, then you have the Silk Road Buddhism. You have a different Buddhism there. And you have the Tibetan Buddhism. That started between the 7th and the 8th century. And there's a good reason to understand what is Tibetan Buddhism, because at that time, when the Buddhists were getting killed by the invading Arabs, also by the start of the Hindu religion by the Shivites and the Vishwanites, the people who worship Vishnu and the people who worship Shiva. There were two sects of them, and then you had the third sect called the Shaivism, or Shaktism. Basically, so these three part of Hinduism were three separate, but they drew away most of the Jains and the Buddhas, and they ran away mostly out of India towards the north side, towards Tibet, and took hiding there with their books and all that. They became the Tibetan Buddhism. And then below you have the East Asia, the Zen and all that. There are different types of Buddhism which spread, from which Kung Fu fighting and all that, Judo and all comes from Zen. So this is just a chart of how Buddhism spread. These are their books. Their books basically is Tipitaka. Basically, we don't have to go through all this. But there is one which is very important, which comes from the Kudaka Nikaya. These are the 15 books of Kudaka Nikaya. One of them branches out to Jataka stories. This is important because most of the stories which you hear, the Ramayana, Mahabharata and all that, and I'll get later on, they come from these stories, the Jataka tales. And we must have known how when we were small, we did read stories of the Jataka tales. Jataka stories are nothing but stories of like parables in the Bible. In Buddhism, when they want to make a point, teach something to their disciples, they make it into stories. They say that these are the previous lives of Buddha. That's how they define it. But they are stories to convey a message, like you say, proverbs in Christianity. Jesus always made a point with proverbs in the Bible, like the prodigal son and all that. They are proverbs. Just similar to that, you have the Jataka stories. This is very one important one, the Hanuman story. You'll be surprised to know who's really Hanuman in Hinduism. Basically, it comes from the Mahakapi Jataka stories. It tells of the Buddha in the past life as a compassionate monkey king who ruled 80,000 monkeys, and how the sacrifice done by the monkey. Actually, there is a story in this. I'll just get very brief in the story. A king was traveling and he takes a rest in the jungle for some time, and he sees a lot of monkeys on a tree, and he advises his army to capture the monkeys so that they can kill and have fresh meat. And suddenly, when they try to put the net, all the monkeys start escaping. And one of the leaders of the monkey, which is shown in the photograph on the top, tries to save all the monkeys to get on from the tree to another part safely. So he keeps his body across to like a bridge. So every monkey steps on him and goes across. But there was one monkey who was very jealous of him and basically breaks his back because of his jealousy and escapes. And the king sees that. And the king feels very sad and is surprised by the bravery of the monkey, that he tells his army not to kill that monkey, take it, but the monkey dies, and to give him a beautiful funeral. Basically, the funeral and the burial is requested by the dying monkey, and the king gave him a royal funeral, honored his skull as a relic, and built a shrine. Now, this is the monkey story in the Buddhist Jataka. Later on, this monkey story goes to China, and they have what we call the Monkey King story. That's a very different story. And these stories were brought back during the Mughal period and written in the form of Hanuman, basically. These are the three baskets, how they have put the books. I'm not getting into details. I have just put this for my reference because most of this I will convert it later on. Here I have put that the Mahayana texts were composed from around the 1st century BC, originally written, not oral. They were recorded in the form of Indian prestige language like Sanskrit, while many are attributed to Buddha. Some of them were also written in the Pali language. And here it depicts the death of Buddha's mother. Later, Buddha's mother is worshipped in India as Lakshmi. On the right side, you can see Buddha's mother with two elephants basically pouring milk on her. But if you show it today to any Indian person, they'll say this is Lakshmi, but it is basically Buddha's mother. Maya Devi, she was called. She dies at childbirth. On the left side, this is a Gandhara art showing her mother giving birth to Buddha there on the left. You have below that, you have a statue on the right. It's called Manjushri. Manjushri is a bodhisattva. I told you to remember who are bodhisattvas. They are one step below Buddha. And even women can attain bodhisattvas. This is the beauty of Buddhism, that Buddhism gave equal rights to women too. They did not differentiate between man and woman in Buddhism. That's the beauty of it. You'll see Buddha, in Buddhism, they respect women. And so they worshipped the woman goddess or the woman bodhisattvas. So they had a god called, they had a bodhisattva who reached that point before Buddha, and that's called Manjushri. Manjushri was later on worshipped by Hindus as Saraswati. Basically, you can see that statue here sitting on the buffalo. This is not a Hindu god. This is the Buddhist Manjushri. And he mentioned below, Manjushri was later on known as Saraswati, and the Mahayana sect later on worshipped statues. Statue worshipping in Buddhism started from the Mahayana. Before that, there was no statues, like I said. The only Buddhist scripture available in India during the British period was the Manjushri in southern Kerala, worshipped with different names. In Kerala, the whole Kerala at that time was either Jains or Buddhist. And they worshipped a different, they called it with a different name, and I will cover that later on in my other slide. This I mentioned something about the Theravada, the elders, how it was formed within Buddhism. And during the first century, Mahayana Buddhism was carried eastward to Central Asia, trade route through the Silk Road, and several new forms of Buddhism evolved. In China, they broke up into different, like Zen and all that. And the third form of Buddhism formed during the 7th, 8th century called the Vajrayana or the exhaustivist Buddhism. This is where magic and mantras and all this started coming into Buddhism. The Vajrayana, because they started worshipping Tantrayanic, means Tantra worship, doing sacrifice and all that. Basically, the message of Buddha was getting lost by the time the 6th, 7th century started coming in. In India, the Vajrayana split into Tantrayan, magic spells, sex using sacrifices, and mantras used by Mahayana. This is the Tantrana or the Tantranic Buddhism. And these were the Tantranic gods. Some of the photographs of the Tantranic gods, if you took, they're very scary. They have very scary faces. And this was adopted into the rituals of sacrifice in the northern India in what you call the Shaktiism. The Shaktiism group, which was growing in India after the 5th, 6th, 7th century, that group started following the Tantranic, what you call the yoga, the mantras, the mandalas, the mudras. These were all basically coming from the Vajrayana. Basically, now you know from where the mandalas and the mudras and all come from. The word mantras also come from Vajrayana, basically. This is the Vajrayana Buddhism between the 7th and the 14th century. Now just keep a flow on the dates on the top, because I want you to basically make a map in your head as to what is happening here. Now we have come to the 7th to the 14th century, and still there is very less of the Vedic religion. And these are the Vajrayana gods. Basically, you can see Mahisha, Mandini, Chamunda, and Tara. Now, when I was small, we used to hear people when they are making spells. They used to say, Hum Chamunda, Hum Chamunda. Have you heard those myths when someone is doing a yagna, they say Chamunda, Chamunda. Chamunda is a god basically from the Vajrayana. And the Chamunda god very closely resembles today's Kali. You can see the half moon on the head. The moon was basically a god for many religions. It's not an Islamic sign. It was in many religions, moon was worshipped at those days. And you can see her, she's having they call it demons in the hand. She has a cut head on her left hand, and she has a sword. And I will later on tell you who are these people's head which these gods are carrying. And you on the right side, you have Tara, basically Tara Devi. And I told you who Tara Devi becomes. The four-faced linga, basically Nepal from the 18th to the 19th. So keep this on the dates here. These are all in the 18th and the 19th. You see how close we are come. British is already there in India by this time. These are the stupas. Even today, they are in Nepal. Some of them are covered with tilak and flowers, and they are converted into Hindu worship. But basically, you can see that Buddha is sitting on the statues here. These were all chipped off, basically, or they're covered with clothes and all that, and you'll see that in the later photographs. This is the stupas in Kerala, and William Pepe, article on William Pepe. William Pepe was the person who basically went searching for Buddha's ashes. And he's the one who in Odisha found a pot in which Buddha's ashes were found. And it was in a chest with a lot of gemstones. and he gave it to the Indian government, and he made a copy of it and he took it to America. Today, his children want to sell the duplicate copy, but the original is there in Calcutta Museum. So this is an article on stupas, basically in Kerala, how the cult changed in Kerala from stupas to Hinduism. It's a long article. You can read it. Basically, if you need, I can send you the PPT. The list of temples, gods which are Buddhist shrines converted or statues blackened and covered with ornaments. On the left side, I give you a list of temples who were actually Buddhist temples and they were converted into Hindu temples. Kedarnath was a Buddhist uh, temple. Badrinath, Triloknath. These are the names of Buddha. Let me also tell you. Kedarnath was the name of Buddha. Triloknath was the name of Buddha. Jagannath is the name of Buddha. Tirupati. This is also the, and I'll show you. I cannot have the time to go through all these temples, but I go through one of them, which is Tirupati, and I'll show you some more interesting things going ahead. In Maharashtra, Buddha was hidden because in those days, like I told you, when the three sects of Hinduism was starting, that is the Shaivism, the Vishnuism, and Shaktism, Jains and Buddhists were getting killed in India. And so many of the people who were worshipping these Jains, Mahavir, and Buddha had to hide their gods. And Panduranga is a god, actually is a Buddha statue, but they changed the names as Panduranga. In Vittala was also Buddha, is called as Vittala. And this is not me saying, this is from the books of Ambedkar. You have, what is it? There's another person who was the freedom fighter with Ambedkar. I'm not getting his name right now, but these are all from the books of Ambedkar and all those people who have written. And they do also mention that Panduranga is Buddha. Interestingly, Bal Thackeray's father, Prabhakaran Thackeray, he had written a beautiful book on Vinayaka, the Buddhist god Vinayaka, how they changed it during Tilak's time, and Tilak basically made it just to fight the British, how he gave importance and made in Ganesha. Basically, it's the Hindu god Vinayaka, the elephant god, it's called. If you go to China, if you go to Malaysia, you will see the elephant god there. You will think that is Ganesha, but it's not Ganesha. If you ask the Chinese, they'll tell you it is the elephant god. They don't call it Vinayaka, they call it the elephant god. Then you have Maya Devi as Lakshmi, and I told you about Tara Devi. The old gods were Indra, and I mentioned to you who's Indra. Brahma. I will cover this Brahma story when I'm covering the Vedic religion. I've covered Heracles, who's Hercules. Devadatta is Dionysus, and I've told you the story of Dionysus, who invades India, and during the time of Semiramis. And then Athena is Gaia, is Gayatri, and the body called Maya. These are some of the gods from the Buddhist Pantra who was taken into the Indian gods. And on the right side, you can see how the Buddha statue was basically converted slowly by changing his eyes. His ears are covered. You see on the left side Buddha. This is a statue basically in the Kedarnath temple. And you see on the top Buddha sitting. Many of the temples, they put these clothes and these golden covers to cover the reality, and they were worshipped as different Hindu gods. Here, I talk of Marisi, the Iranian god of the sun, and I mentioned how this god becomes basically Durga Devi. Here, the Iranian god of the sun. This is the photograph taken from an Iranian museum, basically. She was the solar goddess, son of. In Vajrayana Buddhism, she was known as Tara Devi. You can see the middle two photographs. Tara, and on the right, Tara is sitting on a lion. Now you can understand from where the picture comes of the lion. There's Tara Devi there. And the right side, you see, this is the modern picture of Durga Devi. This picture was painted in 1907 by Raja Ravi Verma. And basically, he visited all the Buddhist temples around India. had a look at them, and he made a copy of the statues. Even the models who sat for the woman, he bought in the prostitutes at that time because women in those times wouldn't sit for modeling. So he had to bring prostitutes. They sat in these poses and he painted their pictures. So if today we have all the god pictures in India, it is thanks to Raja Ravi Verma. He did all these paintings between 1890 to 1905. Bottom is a picture which you have in Hinduism, basically the god Marisi, the Iranian god who became Tara Devi, basically get converted with a garland of skulls. And I'll get back to this story of who are these garland of skulls and the cut head and all that. I'll come to that slowly. Here I just cover this. Tara Devi is primarily recognized as the second of the 10 tantric wisdom goddesses. She is always depicted in blue complexion form. Blue is always the color of death, basically. And like I said, the mother goddess Shakti, because the Shakti group takes over this. And she is known with different names: Kali, Durga, Parvati. These are all different names. On the left side, you see that's a Buddhist statue of the blue goddess. And on the right side, you have the Hindu version of it. Basically, this is happening between 7th to the 8th century now, 8th and 9th century. By the time you already Sankaracharya in southern India has already made the Shivaism, basically the religion to worship Shiva. And here I just give us some more information of the goddess Tara. Unlike goddess Kali, holds a lotus in one of the above hands and a pair of scissors in one of the lower hands. In the remaining two arms, goddess Tara holds bloody kirpana and the kapala. Basically, these are the tools which are shown to filled with blood to kill the enemies. In India, the Gautama Buddha is worshipped everywhere. Some people worshipped him openly, while others worshipped him secretly by changing their names. You can change clothes and paint black faces, but you cannot take away history. Basically, the figure of Buddha in many places throughout India was changed. You can see on the right side here where my mouse is. Right? This is a Buddhist statue, but you can see they put a sari, they covered a face, they covered the eyes, they covered the top. Everything where you can recognize Buddha was covered. And now this is worshipped as a goddess. Ayyappa is also the actual person. Ayyappa is very different. That's a different long story. I will need a separate presentation for that, but I wouldn't do it because none of you would be interested. The story of Ayyappa is very different, but Ayyappa was a Buddhist monk, basically, in reality. That's why they say Swami Sharanam, Ayyappa Sharanam. The word Sharanam is coming from Buddhism, basically. So here are some of the photographs in southern India, which were of Buddhas, but they are all decorated today in the form of Hindu gods. This is a figure 16 Buddha in Nilapuram. These are all in Kerala. Here you have figure 15 Buddha in Mavelikara. Mavelikara is in Kerala. You see the Buddha sitting in his posture on a lotus leaf. On the left side also, this is in Madukudal Garai. This is in Tamil Nadu. So the whole of India below was Jains and Buddhism at that time. Basically, they were worshipped. The first installed bronze idol of Ayyappa had a Sanskrit inscription stating that an artisan named Prabhakar Acharya crafted it in the Kollam area in 1085. The Ayyappa temple was first built in the 8th century. But no one used to go there because only the Shudras used to visit that temple. Brahmins never and Nayars never visited Ayyappa at that time because it was considered to be a low caste god. But later on, the what do you call the worship went on to many people. The Brahmins also started going in. This image got damaged in the fire in 1950, and the current image is a replica of the same, this Ayyappa image. Now I'm just showing some pictures here of the gods, how they were disguised in today's India. On the right side, on the left side, you can see a person worshipping. That's the Buddha statue, basically. You can see it very clearly. but he's the worship. And on the top, if you see that ring there is Buddha sitting on the top too. On the right side, you see this Buddha, it's covered with total cloth. They blackened the Buddha's face, they put a crown, they blackened his eyes, they put a tika, and that's it. And this is the famous Tirupati statue of Buddha. You can't even see anything because this itself is the Buddha statue. You can, the resemblance is here on the right side. This is the standing statue of Buddha. They have totally covered it. You've seen the hands of Buddha here? It's the same hands here, but they have covered all these hands with the garlands and the dress and everything. So much so that is they did not want to show his ears because you know a Buddhist statue with the long ears. They have put ornaments on his ears. The Buddha has a marking on his face. They covered his eyes. They put a face. They put a crown on it. Everything is hidden because religion is business. Tirupati is one of the richest temples today in India. Everything is business. If business goes, everything dies. Most of them took over these Buddhist statues, made them into Hindu gods, made a story around it, and then ran the business. You see on the bottom side, you see this. This is also from a very famous temple. But if once a year they remove all this to clean up, and that's the real statue behind it. Can you see my mouse jumping here? This is the real photo of Buddha, and this is the decorated Hindu god, basically, sitting with garlands and all that. On the right side, you see the sleeping Buddha. This is the position in which Buddha dies when he fell sick, and he dies in this position. The same position is taken for Vishnu. They show Vishnu sleeping in the same position. This was all copied later on, but this is all an inspiration from Buddhism. Here too, I show some similarity of how the Buddhist shrine converted into Tirupati Balaji. Everything, the crown to hide the curly hair, the black coating to hide original complexion, the long ears are covered, the Buddhist mudra is all covered. You see his hands here. This is the Buddhist mudra in the statue which I showed you. You see, but this is a Greek statue, but his hand is cut here. The statue is broken, but it's an open hand. And even the statue, just I'm going out of the topic here. You have seen the painting of Jesus Christ with the hands up. That position is also a stolen position, I presume, from Buddhism. Because these paintings, what you see of Jesus with his hands, those were done in the 16th, 18th century, 17th century, during the Renaissance period. So some of it were a copy, I believe. Maybe it's not true, but here you see the symbol used to hide some portion of his forehead, his eyes and long nose is also covered. Some of these things are not integral parts of the idol, they were added later on. The whole completely covered body to conceal the original identity. This is the Tirupati, this is the reality of the Tirupati Balaji temple. Now I'm coming to the southern side of Kerala, the Kannur district, and what you call in Kerala, Buddha was not known as Buddha. They were known as Shastas. And the word Shasta is never mentioned even in the Rig Veda or the Purana, because southern India was having a different following. They were following a different religion. That means even though they were following Buddhism, they had their own take on it. The stone images of Buddha found from Kerala are ascertainable between the early and middle phases of the temple architecture in Kerala, that means it's the 7th and the 11th century. Buddha idols were known as Shasta idols, and they are shown here. Even today they are there in the Manur, in the district Kannur area, they are there. They are in Palikal, Olampatti, Marayavur. If someone is from South India, you will know these names. All the images of Buddha are seated in the Padmasana with the hands in the Dhyana Mudra and wear no ornaments apart from robes, basically. In the stone images of Buddha, his hair is depicted as curls. Remember when the Mathura period came in and they started making the statues in Mathura, in the Mathura culture, not in the Gandhara culture, because I told you in the Gandhara culture, the Greeks made Buddha look like the Greeks. But when the Mathura art came in, The Indians gave Buddha a look more Indianish. They made him look more Indian type. So there's a difference between his hair in the Gandhara arts and in the Mathura arts. His hair is depicted as curls with sirapatta, that means the joints. The late bronze image of Buddha from Nilambur and Kilinur, these are in Tamil Nadu, do not show the typical traits of the stone images. These images depicted in crowns and other ornaments and the right hand held in the Janana Mudra. You see this mudra which he's sitting in, he's sitting on a lotus basically. This is basically Buddha sitting with the mudra in and on the right side his hand. And this is the mudra which I was talking with Jesus is also shown in many Christian paintings of Jesus, which was done very late in the 16th, 17th century. My feeling is that this mudra was also copied into Christianity in some of the paintings. And I'm not saying anything to make anyone unhappy, but they were only paintings to depict Jesus because Jesus's photographs also were painted very late. We did not have any paintings of Jesus till the 12th, 13th, or 14th century. I went through this, the Jataka tales, and the Ramayana gets its inspiration from the Dasratha Jataka. Dasratha means 10 chariots. And when I am getting to the presentation of Vedic religion, I'll tell you what this Dasratha means, the 10 chariots. You'll make a connection as to what these stories are. Basically, even the Buddhism got these stories from there, some of them. Not all, but the names. But Ramayana was taken from the Dasratha Jataka, giving the number 461 in the Kundaka Nikaya. I showed you all the books in my previous slide. One of the book collection was the Kundaka Nikaya, and Jataka was a part of that, the 15 books in that Kundaka Nikaya. So basically, you have one of the tales called the Dasratha, and the Ramayana basically has the full story. It is available on the internet. You can read it, and you will come to know the real story of Ramayana from the Dasratha. It's very, very different. I don't want to break the suspense here as to what is the real story. It is totally different from what is written in the Mahabharata. The Hanuman story also gets it from the Mahakapi Jataka. I mentioned it before, where the Buddha is the monkey king. And here I just put a picture of the Dasratha Jataka. This is available. The book is available. You get even the PDFs online if you want to read. On the right side, you have this book also available, the Mahakapi Jataka, the Grand Sacrifice. I told you the story of how this monkey gives his life for all the monkeys and then sacrifices his life and how the king sees all this. The death of the Buddha. The Buddha died around 480 BCE at the age of 80 in Kushinagar, India. Basically, on the left side, you can see Buddha lying down, and these are the Ajvaikas. Ajvaikas were what we call the physicians, which we say today. At that time, the doctors and the physicians were known as Ajvikas. This is a Gandhara art created by Greeks. And on the right side, you have the Mathura art, where you see Buddha lying in sleeping position, basically to attain nirvana, and he dies here at the age of 80. I've got this statue in my house in front of my TV. So when anyone comes home, you can see it. I have it here. So this is just a presentation of that. And these, like I said, after his death, his relics, including bone fragment teeth, are now housed in museums and temples in India, China, and Sri Lanka. I did mention this. William Pepe in 1898 went searching for the remains of Buddha, and he did find one. And he found a casket with an inscription which says, "This shrine for relics of the Buddha, the august one, is that of the Shakya." Buddha comes from the Shakya tribe, and that's the reason he was known as Shakya Muni. Pepe donated the bone relics to the king of Siam. Siam is Indonesia today. Thailand, I mean, not Indonesia, Thailand. While other items were sent to the Indian Museum in Calcutta. Pepe donated the bone relics to the king of Siam, like I said, and the Indian Museum in Calcutta. And you see the picture of this is the actual picture of the relic in which his ashes were kept. The cache included 5 relics, gold items, and about 1,000 cut diamonds, not diamonds, gems, along with bones and ash remains. Basically, this was what was found in the stupa. It was found in Orissa. And his tooth was sent to Sri Lanka, and today it's there in Kandy, the Sri Dalaga Maliga temple. His left canine teeth is there of the Buddha, and this is a book which was written by John Strong, The Buddha's Tooth. It's a very interesting book. If anyone is interested, you can read that too. The spread of Buddhism, like I said, Mahayana spread to China, Japan, Korea, Vietnam, India, East Asia, and we have the Yogacara. You know, when someone tells you yoga is something which came from Hinduism, that's another white lie. Yoga came from Yogacara, the book Yogacara, and Yogacara is yoga practice of the monks. This comes basically from Buddhism. And I did write some, it comes from Mahayana Buddhism, and it was started by two brothers, Asanga and Vasubandhu. These are the two Buddhist monks who started yoga. It was called Yogacara. Then you have the next sect is the Theravada that went into Sri Lanka, Cambodia, Thailand, and Myanmar. It emphasizes on the Pali canon. The Pali is the language. Canon means like how we have the books, the Pali books which are there in Sri Lanka. Like I said, after the British, when the British came in, most of the books were destroyed in the destruction of the Takshila and the Nalanda University when they burnt it down. So most of the books of Buddhism were lost. The only book found was in southern Kerala. I showed this was a Manju book on Manjushri. The rest of the information we have and the books of Buddhism basically came from Tibet, China, and from Sri Lanka. So basically in India, the upcoming religion basically destroyed everything Buddhism had. Then you have the Vajrayana, the Tibetans, the Himalayas. Vajrayana did break up into three. They used tantras, magic, visualization. This is the main religion which formed into the Shakti religion, which you call the Kali and Durga and all that, which is worshipping. Durga also has another, Durga Devi also has another story, which we can cover later on. But basically, this is from where it all came. And I have a map at the side where Buddhism actually spread. So you can see how vast Buddhism spread. It spread very quickly, very far away to various kingdoms, just like how Christianity spread. But the other religions of India never spread, except for Buddhism. Even Jainism never spread. But Buddhism spread quite a lot. It went to all the east side. The University of Buddhas, Takshila. Takshila was formed around 600 BC. Basically, even before Buddha, because they had many Buddhas in the line of Buddha. So it was found in 600 BC to about 500 AD. It survived, known as one of the world's earliest universities. Takshashala was, or it's called Takshila, was associated with Jainism. In the start, Takshila was not Buddhist, it was with Jains. So many may not know this. So that's the reason I always believe, because Jainism came before Buddhism, though they had many Buddhas, because Mahavira was also born before Buddha. Was associated with Jainism from the early times, before it became widely known as Buddhist. Named after the Naga king Takshaka. And I mentioned this in my presentation of Nagas, that there was a Naga king called Takshasa, and Takshila was basically named after the Naga king Takshila. Here I put basically a picture of Takshila today, which is the finest and the oldest known universities in the world. Then you have Nalanda. It was during the 5th century AD to the 12th century, considered the world's first residential university. This is the university where most of the Chinese travelers came to study, like Hume Fang, Itzing, and Fayang. These are the travelers who traveled at that time. And this is the university where they came to study Buddhism, basically. And they made copies of Buddhist books and took it to China. At that time, Kanishka gave Faihan, the traveler Faihan, he gave 600 horses. He gave him another 200 elephants, and he gave them a big army to make sure he takes all the teachings of Buddha to China. That's how Kanishka helped Faiyan when he was returning back to China. Then you have the Vikramashala, one of the largest founded by the king Dharmapala, focusing on tantric studies. This is where the Vajrayana University started coming in. Basically, this not Buddhist, but a part of Buddhist, but that's where a mixed combination of mantras, Buddhist ideas, and that is where the Hinduism started to grow. So this is at that time King Dharmapala. And I come to the destruction of this religion. They were basically destroyed by three main areas like Brahmins, the Mughals, and the Marathas. The Marathas did not do a lot of destruction, but they were also a part in Ajanta, the Ellora caves, though it was Aurangzeb who did destroy most of Ajanta and the Ellora caves. But most of the Jains and the Buddhists were killed in southern India in Madurai. The Tamil literature and tradition suggest that 8,000 Jain monks were killed by impalement around the 7th century after a religious dispute, with stories often highlighting the role of Shiva, the saint Sambandha. He was basically after Shaivism coming up, he was a saint there called Sambandha. And they started killing most of the Jains and the Buddhist monks in southern India. The inscription in Karnataka suggests that the followers of Ramananju is one of the Vishnuites. He was against Shankaracharya. So he started a new religion who worshipped Vishnu. So they were called the Vishuites. And they persecuted Jains, including burning temples and forcing conversions to Vaishnavism. Like I said, they worship Vishnu. So they were called as the Vaishnavism. The followers of Shankaracharya were the Shivaites, so they worship Shiva, basically. And then you had Pushpamitra Shunga. He was one of the rulers. He was called the mass murderer of Buddhists, basically. Here we have an article. If you think Aurangzeb was the cruelest emperor in Indian history, you are clearly forgotten Pushpamitra Shunga. He basically wiped out Buddhism from India. He was the king who was known to have basically destroyed everything Buddhism. Then you have the Mughals also, like I said, Aurangzeb did it. Sikandar Lodi also did it. He destroyed it before Aurangzeb. A steady decline of Buddhism in India set in during the first millennium in the wake of the White Huns. The Huns also invaded India. The Turks invaded. So all these people started destroying India during the Gupta era, the Pala Empire, and all that. I'm not going to read everything. But there was a downfall after the 7th, 8th century. Buddhism and Jainism started dying in India. Here I give just a write-up. I don't want to go through it of how Ramananju and Shankaracharya did major conversions. Today, we have so much of debate going on in India on conversions. They are frightened that the Christians are converting, the Muslims are converting. But this is what happened in the 7th, 8th century. The Hindus were converting. They were killing people for not converting into Hinduism. People should read history that, they say when you point a finger of others, the three is pointing towards you. This is where that logic applies. It's a good read. You can go through it, but I'm not going through the whole thing. This is a phrase mentioned in Hinduism. It's called Mundamala. That I told you I'll get back to the garland of skulls. It's called Mundamala. Kali is supposed to be wearing the Mundamala. It is a symbolism which was given to her in those times. Some of this is not very written down everywhere, but they are there, like I'll show you in very few places, because India, being a Hindu country, has basically destroyed most of the proof of these barbaric acts which have done before. And The skull basically is the skulls of the killed Jains and the Buddhist people at that time, worn on the garland of what do you call the goddesses of theirs. Later on, to give little authenticity to it, the names were changed to demons. Basically, if you read today anywhere, and Google, don't ever think Google is really a great place to search, because Google is updated by us Indians there. That's the reason if you search Google, you see everything in favor of Indians. You'll see everything written because Google is run by Indians. And even the Wikipedia is run by, it's all updated by Indians. So a lot of things have changed in most of these internet searches. So don't just blindly believe. You have to get to the old books and all that to get the real facts. Below that, I show you a picture. Look at it very carefully. This is a statue. This is a painting where people are killed. You know, there's a spear going through a person's full body. One is hung here. You see it very carefully. They are all people hung and killed. These are nothing but the pictures and mural paintings of Buddhist Jains and Buddhist people getting killed. And this is glorified in the Meenakshi temple in Kanchipuram today. It shows the death of Jains in the temple murals even today. The impalement of Jain is depicted on the wall forest of the golden lily tank of the Meenakshi temple. The store carvings of the Thiruvegadam Shivai temple also depict the events from the legend. This is still there today, and it is written in Tamil below. You can see the writing in Tamil as to how the Jains and the Buddhists were killed. And this is a very graphic painting of how they were speared and kept on, like if you see the photographs of how Dracula killed his people who went against him, a very similar photo, very graphic picture. Then I come to just under Buddhism, we also had a lot of Buddhists who were the pioneers of medicine. Today, those pioneers are hijacked and shown as Hindus in history, but most of them were not Hindus, they were Buddhists, basically. The first, what do you call, surgeon and physician was called Jivaka, and I showed you when Buddha was dying. Here's this, all the Jivakas standing in front of you, and it's written here, the relief depicts Jivakas treating the Buddha's foot after the unsuccessful murder attempt by his monk Devadatta. Basically, the Jivakas were physicians of those times, and some of them were the greatest surgeons too. One of them is called Ajvika. He was the greatest physician and surgeon. He lived at the time of Buddha. And he was also the physician of King Bimbasara of Magadha and the king Ajushatru. Now, don't confuse Bimbasara for, there's an other Bhumisara that is during Chandragupta's time. Bimbisara was a different king at the time of Buddha. So there are two Bimbisara, one Bimbisara and one Buddhisara. So don't confuse them both. This is just a slide to show that how advanced the Buddhists were at that time. Coming to martial art, I don't know if many of you know, martial art also was a gift from Buddhism to the Chinese. Bodhidharma, a 5th century Indian monk, is traditionally regarded as the founder of the Shaolin Kung Fu. Today you have all that Jackie Chan and all that, but it was our Buddhist monks who first founded the Shaolin Temple and the first patriarch of the Chiang Zen Buddhism. Bodhidharma's teaching and practice center on medication and the Lankava Sutra. Now, this is a very good book. Basically, this book talks. When I come to the Vedic religion, I'll tell you from where Ravana comes from. Ravana's story comes from Lankava Sutra. According to Lankava Sutra, Ravana was a very learned king. And I'm not going into deep on that, but the story of Ravana comes from here. So now you can understand how the stories were all mixed together. So, but Bodhidharma's teachings are also in the Lankava Sutra. It's called the Buddhist martial arts. Traditionally, it is attributed to the Bring Bodhisattva who developed exercises to improve the physical stamina of the monks. The Aikido and the Judo, often cited as employing Zen Buddhist principles of non-violence. If anyone has studied judo and aikido, that form of fighting doesn't kill. It only protects yourself. Judo is to protect yourself. It's not to attack. If anyone has learned judo, aikido and judo is the principle of non-violence is to protection. So these were taught to the monks because they used to travel from place to place, and they had to protect themselves from people. It was a self-defense only. The purpose is largely defensive, to protect monasteries and to uphold the principle of protecting life, not to destroy life. I have taken some of these references from these books, The Arts of Asian History, Buddhism, Hinduism, and Jainism, the Gandhara Arts from the American Journal of Archaeology, Alexander's Information Active from the Silk Route Portraits from Gandhara, Tucker Johnson's The Silk Route, and we have the memoirs of Travancore Survey. This is from where I get most of the information of Sabrimala, Ayyappa, and things related to the Kerala history on Buddhism. I got it from the Travancore Survey. Basically, it was written between 1863. And I also mentioned the pages from where I have taken it. There's a beautiful book written by Rajiv Patel, Brahm Ka Pulinda. It's a recent book. And it's a very beautiful book. He's a Dalit. And he writes and exposes a lot of things about Buddhism, basically. If anyone gets a chance to read this, it's in English too. In the English and Hindi, I think. I think there's an English version, but look for it if you're interested. It's a good read. And this is just the last slide of mine on the Buddha. These are the words that Buddha said: with our thoughts, we make the world. Peace comes from within, do not seek it without. Three things cannot be long hidden: the sun, the moon, and the truth. These are the sayings of Buddha, basically. So that comes to, I wrap up my on Buddhism. I hope I've covered the chapter clearly. There's a lot in Buddhism, but you just can't, you don't need to get into everything. But this is just the summarized of what is it. And coming to my chapter on how the religion spread from Noah's sons, it basically ties up with Jainism more than Buddhism. Buddhism has little ties to the story on Noah, but I still have, there are some information in some books of the start of Buddhism when it comes to the 24 Buddhas and all that. Otherwise, it is a separate route of religion, basically. Any comments, guys? I know today we have only a few, but still, any comments since we have a few folks here?
No, Glady, this is a informative. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, Gladdy, it's amazing. I don't know how you managed to get all these things put together and what all readings you do, but yeah, great job.
Yeah, it's a lot of the information I gather from different areas, so that the subjects don't clash. But anyway, it is just some information I'm putting together and put it up in a book later on. But I think
one question I had, Glady. You mentioned about Ashoka's that script, right? Like 3 languages.
yeah.
So that means that language was there, right? Present, and there were scholars that time. So why they had to take it to some other country for
Very,
to
very good question, Victor. Very good question. Have you heard about the Egyptian what is the stone, the Rosetta Stone? Have you heard about the Rosetta Stone?
Yeah, the institution that teaches all languages.
Oh, that is, they took the name from that. The Rosetta Stone is a stone found in Egypt which had 3 languages in it. It had Greek, it had hieroglyphic, Egyptian hieroglyphic, and it had one more language. I'm not understanding it. It had 3 languages. Now, we couldn't read the Egyptian hieroglyphics, just like the Indus Valley civilization. No one could read it. We couldn't decipher. We didn't know what the symbols stood for. But we broke the Egyptian hieroglyphic code because we found the Rosetta Stone. Because the Rosetta Stone had an inscription about a king's story in 3 languages. That means if you could read one language, you could decipher what is the third language, second and third. You get my point? That's how they deciphered the alphabets of the Egyptian hieroglyphs. Otherwise, there was no way to understand what the Egyptians wrote the hieroglyphs. That is how the Rosetta Stone helped us.
But that time if somebody wrote it, that means the people were reading, right, or something. That language was present, right? So
Ashoka's time it was present. Pali was present. Ashoka's everything was written in Pali. The common language between the people at that time during Ashoka Gupta period, the common man spoke only Pali. Sanskrit formed at that time from Brahmi. Now, with the Devanagari script, you have to understand when did the Devanagari script come in. The Devanagari script came in very late. It came in around second, third, so third century or fourth century from Pali, because the Brahmi scripts comes from Pali, and Brahmi also comes from the Aramaic language from Syria and all that. It has got a lot close connection. And then Sanskrit was written in those days very different. Today we have about 24 alphabets in Sanskrit, but those times Sanskrit had only about 16 alphabets. They did not use a lot of other alphabets or vowels, what we call today in English. They were not used. So at Ashoka's time, when Ashoka engraved the pillars, this was lost till the British came in. The Indians never even knew what was it. The Britishers, when they came in, they seen the Ashoka pillars. They realized that this is something important, but they couldn't read it. So they bought in all the Hindus from Lucknow and all that, because they knew that there was Sanskrit in that. But the Sanskrit which we are reading today is very different from the Sanskrit which Gupta period was writing. You're getting my point? So they couldn't read the Sanskrit which was written on the pillars. They had to send it to Germany because Max Müller was a professor in languages. So Max Müller, along with his students, they deciphered the language, and then they came up with what was written on the Ashoka pillars. It is not, and by the time India got independence and all, there's a lot of time between Gupta period and 18th, 19th, 20th century. People forgot the languages. The old language was forgotten. Sanskrit formed into very new. And then from Sanskrit, a lot of, with the Devanagari script, you got all the other languages like Tamil, Hindi, and all that. They all come from the Devanagari script. Whereas the old script was Pali. Pali was on the Prakrit script. So if you follow the timeline of language, you can come to know when things were written. And that's the reason today many theologians around the world are realizing that many of the timelines written in India are very wrong, because Sanskrit is not an old language. The only proof we have of written Sanskrit is on Ashoka's pillars. Nowhere else we have Sanskrit written. But Pali you have even more older. They say no, Tamil is the oldest language, but Tamil also, the inscription, the oldest inscription we have of Tamil language comes from Brahmi. Brahmi is an offshoot of Pali. And I showed you in my last presentation how the Tamil language looked in the 5th century, 6th century, and the today's Tamil, how it looks very different in the modern era. It looks totally different, because writing Tamil in those days was in Brahmi script. Today, Tamil is written in Devanagari script. You got it, Victor?
Thank you. Yeah, good. Thank you.
Someone else was asking something. I don't know.
Thanks, Gladys, for the presentation.
Oh, okay. No problem. And thanks for attending. I just stopped the
All right.
recording.